Patrick Clark is a product of a variety of influences. His father worked for the National Security Agency, and as a result, Patrick moved a lot. 36 times at his last count, with stints on both coasts and a large portion of his childhood spent in England. His mother's interest in theater led to Patrick immersing himself in that arena for much of his life. Patrick has performed on local stages, directed over 40 shows at the middle and high school level, and appeared in commercials and even in a couple of movies. His most recent employer was the Ohio History Connection, where he served as a marketing specialist, interacting with school districts and other educational institutions across the state. He owes a lot of his joy to his daughter, a soon-to-be high school graduate, and his lovely partner, Colleen. Go ahead, Jack, or Patrick, take it away.
Thanks. I would love the opportunity to share my screen if I could.
Oh, let me set that up for you.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to jump into this pretty quickly, but what you're going to be hearing about today is a project that originated out of COVID and a situation that a lot of creatives found themselves in, which was the majority of their outlets were shut down. So I'm going to share with you first a quick taste of what was created out of that, and then talk to you a little bit more about its origins.
Good evening, and welcome to Productions Vintage Radio Hour. Our collaboration with over 50 outstanding performers and technicians from across the country, and a legacy of audio entertainment that harkens back to the golden days of radio, brings you a second season of 12 shows filled with suspense, mystery, fear, and maybe a little murder. The upcoming show, The Dead Laugh, originally airing in 1956, features Scott Douglas Wilson, Mark Mann, Nancy Shelton Williams, Liz Gervin, Ben Gorman, and Rick Clark in a shocking tale that covers most of the 7 deadly sins. So grab some popcorn and curl up on the couch to complete the cycle. Stay tuned after the show to hear about next week's doubleheader. Now,
I know he's dead. His body's been in the grave for weeks, and yet, although I tell myself it's impossible, I can hear him laugh. That raucous mocking sound.
So that's just a taste of what we do at Productions. But the last slide lied, because where it said we were 50 strong, we're almost 90 actors strong from ages 9 to 82 and in 16 states and now in the UK. This started out as an opportunity to get together with a couple of friends and do 2 or 3 radio shows. We're now working on season 3 of a Halloween production coming up in the second week in October. 12 new shows, and again, working our way towards conquering the entire country, it seems. So the origins of this project, as I told you, I wanted to do 2 or 3 shows with a couple of friends because a show that I was cast in was postponed due to COVID. And as you can see, my little setup from which I'm talking to you today has grown to reflect some more technology and a lot more time on my hands than I had anticipated with COVID. So there's a legacy to this that will ring somewhat true with the Rotary, in that New Yorker Radio Hour talked about the origins of radio entertainment that happened back in the 40s and 50s when the polio epidemic was rampant. And the fact that kids were not allowed to go outside and swim in swimming pools during the summer because of the impact of polio. So the powers that be, including people like Hubert Humphrey, created radio entertainment to entertain the kids while they were stuck inside. So that sort of has come around full circle now, and we're doing the same sort of thing. Back then, we were talking about people like, as you see, Peter Lorre, Gene Kelly, Bela Lugosi, that were involved in the radio productions when they weren't shooting movies. So we have incorporated people from all walks of life. And the beautiful fact of this project is that it doesn't make a bit of difference what you look like, because all we do is stream the audio to a YouTube channel, and that's what people listen to. Beautiful thing about this is the inclusiveness of this project. And for some of you, it's going to be even more resonant for people like Ken Ernie, whose brother is part of the Rotary. Ken is going to be challenged to do a traditional stage production again anytime in the future. But because he doesn't have to worry about memorization, doesn't have to worry about the traditional movement, he can be a part of this project and stay engaged to a community that he has loved for decades. That's a huge part of our mission. We have people who have never done theater before who want to try their hand at this because somebody told them, well, you'd be great at voiceover work. So they get to participate in this. We have the LGBTQ community. We have a production of Frankenstein coming up on Halloween weekend that features an all-black cast. So we have made inclusion a huge part of our mission. And as you see by the age range, we have everybody from 9 to 82 represented. And so what we're finding now is what was intended to be a small little project. I'm now fielding calls from people across the country wanting to be a part of this project. And it's kind of overwhelming, to be very honest with you. This was intended to be a small project that has grown bigger and bigger and bigger by the week. And our intention is to create an opportunity for actors to continue acting and honing their craft. We also are entertaining people for whom some of this work is nostalgic, in that this is the way that they grew up, and this is the sort of entertainment that they listened to when they were younger. And we want to perpetuate that. There's a simplicity to using your imagination to be entertained, and we have tapped back into that. We also want to provide opportunity for technicians to get involved with this. We're incorporating 21st century technology, but using the authentic scripts from the 1940s and 50s. So the ongoing outcomes that we continue to pursue, we've had connections with, and through the Rotary, thank you very much, connections with Voice Corps. And that is the service that helps the visually impaired, and providing a link to their constituents to listen to this. I'm actually in collaboration with a theater professor in Virginia who is creating a unit for his acting class on acting for radio. So there's an educational branch of this that has opened up. We are working this season with a musician down in Houston, Texas, who is creating original music for this season. So each one of the shows will have its own original theme music. His intention is to be working on scores for movies. So this was a step in that direction for him. We are creating original works with a couple of our actors who are also playwrights, one of whom is out of Chicago, to create original works for this project. And coming up during Halloween week, we're actually going to be launching the first of our forays into the virtual event arena. We're going to be broadcasting live from Dutch Creek Winery down near Athens, Ohio, for a small VIP audience for them. So the opportunity to take this on the road and create entertainment for people as those kinds of institutions, those kinds of organizations and businesses start to open back up. It's an opportunity to entertain using the vintage radio model. The hope long term is that we can get to monetize this in some way, because there are a lot of arenas that we could be venturing into. For example, creating a subscription base for example, retirement homes, assisted living facilities. There is the opportunity to expand more into colleges as that model gets branched out into other schools, high schools, middle schools, creating a training exercise for students in the acting arena. Of course, we want to continue to expand into all 50 states. It sounds very Spectre-like, but that is our plan, and potentially take advantage of our work overseas as well. We want to continue to produce additional works, create a web presence for the organization, and continue to promote that live broadcast option as well. So all that to say is I have created a monster, and it's got all these varied branches on it. And again, I can't reiterate enough, all of the collaborative work that has gone into this is what's made this all possible, from the technical end, from actors like Phil, who helped to make the introduction, and all of the people from across the country who have participated in this, supported this, the graphics work that has gone into this. People like Joanne Shorston, who has seen the value in this and has reached out to try and help promote it, has been a little intimidating and overwhelming, but incredibly welcoming, because it has allowed a lot of people whose artistic talents were atrophying to continue to work and to continue to train and communicate and be a part of a community. A couple of small stories that came out of this. I was actually able to work with my father, with whom I had never performed before. My father was an old radio guy who actually interviewed Vincent Price for his college radio program and worked with Bob Hope at one point. He and I were actually, after all these years, able to come together and actually work on one of these projects together, which was an amazing opportunity for me. But it's going to continue to grow. I have created a monster, and with that in mind, Halloween is coming. So we would encourage everybody to engage, dig a little bit deeper into Vintage Radio Hour, as brought to you by Productions. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Patrick, that's great. Let's see if we can open it up for some Q&A. Somebody raise their hand or just open your mic and.
Chip, I have a question.
Go for it, George.
Patrick, thanks for sharing your creative ideas and inspiring all of us in once you start something, how it can grow. Do you have any room for comedy production within your framework? And I ask this, my daughter is involved with comedy production in New York. And I'm just curious to see if, there may be any creative involvement that I can pass on to her or connect her to you, or just hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. It's a great question, because we were sort of living in the suspense, thrills, and chills in the past couple of seasons. And actually this season, we're launching this season with 4 different comedies, some of which may be familiar to you. Life of Riley is one of them. My Favorite Husband, which was a Lucille Ball vehicle back in the days of the original productions. And a couple of others are being a part of this season. We welcome, and that's one of the great things about this project, is that it has the capacity to welcome ideas, individuals, anybody who's got some input and would like to contribute, either as an actor, a technician, or a playwright, would be absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Patrick, my son-in-law is a freelance writer. He has produced plays off Broadway. How would he get a hold of you?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in the chat window, I'm going to put the email address for the production.
Okay.
The best way to get connected. I'm also going to put the link for the YouTube channel, because what we do is, as actors, we meet, rehearse, and perform in this sort of environment right here, Zoom, and then we live stream the audio for the performances to a YouTube channel. The audience doesn't see what we see right now with all of these windows, and they only get the audio that we generate. So I'm going to throw in the chat window that email address, So anybody who's interested in furthering the conversation can get in touch.
Other questions or comments for Patrick?
Patrick, I don't know that you used the word podcast in your presentation. So obviously, and that's even maybe an archaic term. The podcasts are really popular, so they're very, very similar. I guess if you said something about a webcast, I mean, so you probably have your episodes archived on a website somewhere, which I guess would kind of make them a podcast, wouldn't it?
Well, again, thank you for the question, John. So we do archive our productions on that YouTube channel. So if you go to the YouTube channel that is under Productions Vintage Radio Hour and subscribe, you'll have access to all of the past shows that we've done in the previous 2 seasons. And then as we continue to generate new productions, those will be posted on that YouTube channel as well.
So in the old days of radio, there was advertisements too. So I assume that this is a vehicle for that too, and it actually sort of make vintage sounding advertisements and commercials, a couple of them per episode, right?
You're absolutely right. And we're actually going to be with that live broadcast from Dutch Creek Winery. That's what we're going to be starting to do. As part of their sponsorship, we're going to be running ads for them. And we actually ran one of them last night. We incorporated the ads into one of the comedies we did last night because it was all about braising beef. And it seemed a really funny take on what a commercial was back then. And it has some humor value now.
That's great.
Thank you.
Patrick, this is Rob Ernie. You mentioned my brother Ken as being one of the participants. Number one, this is a great idea, and I hope that you're very successful with it and it gets off the ground and just explodes. I like the idea a lot. And I also just wanted to thank you for involving my brother Ken. You know, he's got Parkinson's disease, so he's got pretty bad memory problems, but he still has a good mind and he can read well and he can read with great expression, as you know. So I wish you well and I thank you for involving him.
Absolutely, Rob. I had the opportunity to perform with Ken in a production at Catco, and from that moment, it was, as you know about Ken, he connects with love to everybody, and he's an asset to the Columbus theater community, and I'm just very taken with your brother. So he's always welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, and I wish you the very, very best.
Thank you so much.
So Patrick, a question popped up in the chat about the YouTube link. Can they get to that from the website or do they need to?
I am just about to post that for everybody.
Perfect.
This is Phil. I'd just like to make one comment, kind of closing my thoughts on it too. As a kind of a part-time actor in community theater here, someone who's been trained in stage productions, you know, you find out that you can't rely on facial expressions or gestures or stage movement or props and set design or anything. It's all in the voice, and that melodrama really comes through. So besides the inclusivity that is a real benefit, I think, of this operation, it's a new experience too for a lot of us actors who never really performed this way, and it can be a real challenge. So I really encourage everybody to go out, listen to some of the vintage shows. They're on the YouTube channel now. And this season that Patrick mentioned, we have some featured actors like Cabot Ray, Doug Joseph, who's been active in a lot of Short North Stage and Catco Productions, and some other, some really prominent performers. So I really encourage you all to listen in if you get a chance.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Hey, Patrick. So question for you. What's your take in talking to people around the country? What's the overall feeling in the theater community in regards to the opportunity to go back live? I wish you all success with what you're doing. I think it's a great concept, but getting back together, what are you hearing? What are you feeling from the rest of the acting community around the world, or around the country?
Well, again, thank you for the question. It's a great one. And there was initially, I think, a despair, because it seemed, you know, at the outset that nothing was ever going to reopen ever again. And this was going to be this environment, this, you know, Zoom environment and others similar to that would be the way that it's going to go. But I hearken back to even further back to the 1917, 1918 time when the Spanish flu was the big talk of the town, so to speak.
Sure.
We got past that. And we got to the point where we are reflecting on a time when things seemed really, really desperate then. We have advanced so much technologically in terms of medicine and a lot of other ways that I think, and again, I think it relates to we have a short attention span anymore. And whatever happens now seems to be what it's going to be like for the rest of our lives, as opposed to having the patience to wait it out and to allow ourselves and the intellectuals and the innovators and the inventors to get us back to where we were, which will happen. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we're going to move past this as long as we do everything that we need to do according to the professionals that are working in those industries. Do what we need to do, and we'll get back to a sense of normal, and maybe with a little bit more caution, maybe with a little bit more awareness, and hopefully with a little bit more compassion.
Thanks. So I saw Scott Whitlock is asking if you could talk about how the technology's changed over the last 70 years.
That's an amazing question, because as we've discovered in Zoom, all of the fears and anxieties that you have about being a live performer still exist in Zoom, because things happen there just as they did in live theater. And I'll bring up an example. I was in a show from this last season, and it was me and one other actress. And the power went out in my neighborhood, which knocked me out of the Zoom call during the live performance. So we had the foresight to have a slide that said, technical difficulties, thank you for your patience. I got on my phone, texted the production manager, told her what had happened, told her to send me the Zoom link so I could go in on my phone, got into my phone, got into the chat function to let her know I was there, and told her in 5 seconds fade, well, by the way, what page are we on? And in my mind, that took 3 years, but in reality, it was probably about 3 minutes at the most to get back in. So all of the functions and features of live performance still happen with mistakes, etc. But the technology, to answer your question more directly, we're allowed to do this kind of thing. The effects that we are having incorporated into the productions are done digitally. We don't have a Foley table because we discovered that Zoom has these gating functions where if two people try to talk at the same time or somebody comes in too loudly, it mutes some of those sounds. So a live Foley table isn't something that we've figured out how to manifest through the production. So we're doing those things digitally. So that's an advance, I guess, that allows us to continue to add those sound effects and the sound bites and all of those different things. And the technology, the beautiful thing about it is I can now connect with people in California. Last night we had somebody in California, somebody in Chicago when we were rehearsing. And that's the beautiful thing about the technological advances, is that those things can happen, those connections can be made, and those small communities can be created for the duration of those rehearsals and productions. So that technology is something that brings us closer together and also allows us to continue in light of the current climate with COVID shutting everything down. And the challenge, as Phil was kind of mentioning, is we need to be even more attuned to each other as actors, because we have to create the sense for the audience that everybody's in the same space,
Right.
that everybody's sitting in the same room and interacting with each other, when in fact they're actually interacting with somebody from Kentucky or Tennessee or New York, but having to make that seem like it's happening in one space. So that technology also has to be met by actors learning how to format their work in that environment as well.
Makes sense. So, hey, Bob Lash, I saw your hand up. If you want to unmute. Oh, you're muted. All right. Bill
Question
Lane.
about Herb Brown.
Yeah, you see that question?
Yeah, Herb's a friend of mine. I actually played poker with Herb before. Lost money to Herb, I should say. And yeah, I do reach out to playwrights and have continued to reach out. And it was Herb's birthday yesterday, and as part of my birthday message, he and I are going to touch base and start talking about what he could potentially bring to this project as well.
That's great. I don't see Mike Shedinger on. I was trying to remember, we had a speaker a few years ago that was related to the Crossley family, and he talked a lot about the early days back in Cincinnati and forming the early radio station. Procter & Gamble was a big advertiser and supporter at that time, obviously, of these type shows, and it was very interesting. And I just can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but somebody you might want to meet or know, because I think it would be a great tie-in. Get a lot of history.
Yeah, I welcome anybody to provide those kinds of connections, because we love watching this thing grow, and it's sort of happening in spite of us.
Other questions for Patrick before we let him go?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's a question exactly, but a concern that Rotary is uniquely qualified to answer, or at least Rotarians are. When you look at the future, some of you know that when I do my proud mother thing, my daughter is a Broadway stage manager, and there's a lot of gloom and doom in New York these days. The Metropolitan Opera just canceled its whole season. And there are so many needs right now. There are people who are hungry, there are people who are homeless, and those things have to come first. But those of you who have the ability to support really need to think about not only supporting local enterprises, because we must, but the big national ones who are the ones who stage operas that nobody's ever seen, or provide a new way of looking at old information, are hungry too. And if you can give, this is the time to do it, because to get from where we are to where we'd like to be is not simple. And all I can do is add a plea as an elderly fundraiser that that's important too.
Thanks, Violet. Ken Ackerman.
Would second that. I've been working hard to support the Metropolitan Opera and some others. I wanted to mention, since Crossley came up, I wonder, Patrick, if you know Rusty McClure.
That's it. That was who I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Rusty.
yeah. And Rusty is a novelist who lives in Dublin. And if you don't know how to reach him, I can put you in touch.
Ken, that would be fantastic. I do not know Rusty. But again, any of those kinds of connections, we seem to be a magnet for new connections, people looking to work, or like in these instances, people who know somebody who might be interested in this project. So please, I welcome any kind of connection you can make.
Well, I am going to put you in touch with my son, who's a playwright and TV technician in New York, and he's
Excellent.
looking for things to do.
That's great.
Well, thanks, Patrick. Any final words for the club today?
Just thank you so much for the opportunity to share this project and to connect with some people who have, as with Rob, a very personal connection to it. But anybody else who is a supporter of the arts, thank you so much for the work that you do, even if it's not with Productions, anything that you do. It's a community that's desperate for the opportunity to stay viable.
Thanks, Patrick. We appreciate it. Well, I want to thank everybody again for joining today. Spread the word, let members, friends, and others know that we're on Mondays at noon, and have them join us. Next week, we're going to have Steve Stover back. He's our expert foodie, and we'll hear some insights, I'm sure, about restaurants that are open, and we're going to have patios and where we can and can't eat out if you're in that mood and willingness to do that. The meeting itself is adjourned.